Okay. So there are also people in the audience that may be interested in joining a startup, or maybe they're at a startup now, but maybe are interested in going into a different area, and they're looking at number of different options. What would you advise them to look at when evaluating a number of different startups? And it would be interesting to hear your experience with Uber. What compelled you to join Uber, and what did you look at to make that decision?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing I would tell you is I would encourage everyone in their career sometime to go work at a startup. It's such an amazing experience, and especially for young people, I think people early in their careers, because there's so much to do, and you'll be giving so much responsibility, number one. Number two, when you're at a startup, especially in a new cutting edge area, let's say that's VR, or maybe that's gaming, or that's Web3 or something like that. Nobody knows anything. No one's been in the industry longer than 2 years, for that part of the sector. So even if you're 25 years old, you can quickly become the expert in the space very, very quickly. So, I think that's quite important. And then number three is you just learn so much. You learn so much because you're being pushed, you're working a lot of hours, you're meeting a lot of great people, usually, the people around you who are also risk taking and want to take initiative. I think that's also great. And so I always recommend startups to everyone to do it sometime in your career, and to maybe even start a company at some point. But I think for me and my experience with Uber, and the advice that I give my friends is, what I would tell you is you have to first of all figure out what stage of startup you're the most interested in, right? Because they're all very different. The first type of company at the earliest stage is a pre-product market fit, pre-launch company. Nobody knows if it's going to work. It's not even a 50-50 chance. It might be a 10% chance that it's going to work. It's a very low chance that it'll work. But it's great because it's so creative. You put so much energy into it. You learn a lot. You try a lot of things. There's a lot of really good aspects of that. And I think for people who love risk and are very creative, that's a great place to be. You also often get to work with the founders very closely, because the company will be under 10 people. There's something really great there. My biggest recommendation for people who are interested in that stage of company is they should be focused mostly on two things. One is, how good are the founders? Are these people that you want to work for? Are these people that you feel like you can learn from? And are these some of the best people in the world at what they do? I think that's very important. Another thing I would look at is, are there good investors who've decided to invest in these companies, right? That's often a good indication, because investors like Andreessen Horowitz or like Coral, see thousands of opportunities each year, right? And so if a real venture capital firm decides that this is a good company, okay, well, that's probably a good sign that that it is a good company. You never know, but it's at least one signal you should take into account. The next stage of companies ends up being companies that are post-launch and they're growing and they have a product out in the market. The thing that I tend to think about there is it growing fast? Is it growing more than 3 times per year? Because you kind of need, I talk about it in my book why it needs to be 3 times, but you basically need to get there in order to build a big enough company fast enough. So I worry about that, and I focus on that. I also think that's where you're much more interested in there about what the role is going to be, who your direct manager is going to be, and focusing on whether or not you want to stay in the sector for a long time. And then the ones that are late stage, these are companies, when I joined Uber, it was clear that Uber was going to be a great company. It didn't have tens of thousands of employees yet, but it had 1,000 employees in San Francisco, and we were already we were already had 10 million users, right? So it was already a pretty big company. And so for that one, I think that those types of opportunities, you have to be very sure that you think that company can be a very big company, because you don't want to join and then the market's not big enough, to be kind of the next level. And so I think a lot more about market size in that case. I think a lot more about, is this one of the most important companies in the industry. If you're gonna work in crypto, like Coin, and you want to join a company that's late stage, like look at Coinbase, right? Because that's the late stage company. That's kind of the, blue chip, type of thing. Versus if you're gonna work for that in gaming, like you should work at Roblox or Discord, because those are the companies that are going to be around in 5 years. So yeah, I think it depends on what kind of stage, and I think you just have to really know yourself and what you're the most interested in. I think the biggest mistakes are often people who want to take more risk, but like their parents or their, significant other tell them, no, don't do it. I think, follow what you love, and you have to try it. Otherwise you're going to, regret it each day. And, and then people that, and then I think one great thing about startups these days is we're in an environment where tech is, is a great career track, and you can work at a bunch of startups, and you can try things and you can fail, and you can try things and succeed. And there's so much to learn. So it's a very good time to be in tech right now.
That's a great message. So just to summarize, seed, early stage, focus on the people, late stage, focus on the market, and in between, if you were going to summarize what to focus on, what would it be?
Yeah, I think you want to make sure that there's real traction, in the business. Yeah. So I would look at the growth rate. I would look at retention. I would look at, and then I think for each of these stages, I think it's always helpful to just look at, what kinds of people are being hired. If there's big executives with, very good reputations that are joining a later stage company, that's always a good sign. If there are top venture capitalists, top investors that are continuing to invest in the company, that's a good signal as well. So yeah, so I always try to use some external signals as well, so that you're not, because a lot of times if you don't interview at enough companies to be able to decide for yourself.